Welcome, everyone, to Winning Wednesdays with Pear VC. At Pear, we've been fueling the next generation of tech startups for 10 years. And working closely with founders, we've seen that again and again that a good product just isn't enough to build a big business. You also have to have a winning strategy and go to market. We all have always believed that leveraging community and learning from one another is key to establishing the right winning mindset, frameworks, and strategies. So that's where Winning Wednesdays with Pear VC comes in. This is a 45-minute webinar series on go-to-market topics with actionable insights for founders and teams building from 0 to 1. Our webinars are broken up into 2 parts. Part 1 is a 20 to 25-minute presentation from a guest with go-to-market expertise, and Part 2 is a lively Q&A. We're your hosts, Pear Go-to-Market team, Beppe and Anna. Today, we're thrilled to have Arlo Hill with us. Arlo is a former Broadway actor and startup founder who coaches leaders on how to present with confidence and authenticity. He works with founders, CEOs, and leaders of all levels on how to connect with their audiences and inspire trust, even in the most high-pressure scenarios. As a performer, Arlo has been seen on Broadway, at Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, the Kennedy Center, and his solo work has been written up in the New York Times. As co-founder of Second Body, he developed one of the first AI-powered conversation practice platforms. We invite you to turn on your cameras and engage with reactions as Arlo presents. After his remarks, please participate actively in the Q&A. Without further ado, Arlo, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Anne. I really appreciate it. Very excited to be here. Really, thank you all for coming. Excited to do this. The title of this talk is Speaking and Selling with Confidence. With confidence, using a lot of confidence when you speak and present. Now, so the reason I use this word, which is very loaded, is because when founders and leaders and public speakers come and work with me, this is usually the word that they use. They usually come in and they say, hey, I wish, Arlo, that I had a little bit more confidence when I presented or when I pitched. Or I don't feel like I'm inspiring confidence in others, or I want to convey a sense of confidence. And this is universal. Actually, let's do that here. Let's a little show of hands, or me in the chat, or an emoji or something. If you have ever felt you wished you were a little bit more confident in a certain situation, in a new job, when you're speaking, maybe you have maybe you have an outfit in your closet and you're like, I wish I were confident enough to wear this outfit. Like whatever it is, it's universal. And yet, at the same time, although we want to feel confident and certain and assured, especially in the startup world, you actually know that very little, if anything, is certain. That nothing is assured, that you can't really be totally, completely confident about anything while when you're building the airplane while you're trying to get it to take off. So there's also another word. We know enough to know that being extremely confident and having, swagger, whatever you want to call it, having this real confidence, there's a word for that also, right? Which is hubris, which is being foolishly overconfident. So I find it useful to reframe this idea of confidence and think instead about impact, the impact you're having on others. When you speak, when you pitch, when you present, when you're talking in a sales meeting, talking to investors. And the reason is, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how you feel. It doesn't actually matter. What matters is how you make somebody else feel. So today I want to share a set of tools that you actually already all have, but you may not know you have them. Tools that can profoundly influence the way that you make other people feel, and therefore the impact you have on them, and then therefore the outcome of your pitch to an investor or your sales meeting or whatever it is, the outcome. And before we jump into the tactical stuff, I actually want to do a little experiment. I'm going to go back to the beginning. Oh, there's a kid here. Hi, kids. I have 2 little kids, so it's nice to see them on camera. Sometimes mine join me on camera too. Maybe not today. We'll see. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of everything I said and speak these words again, but say them differently. And what I'm going to invite you to do is, as I'm speaking, pay very, very close attention not to me, but to yourself, to how you feel as I'm speaking. And by the way, one of the reasons that I am not sharing a pitch deck at this moment is that you can pay attention to me, to what you see, to what you hear, and you can also notice where those 10 other mission critical items that are bubbling up in the back of your head, where you give your attention to them and you say, I need to respond to that Slack message. I need to send that email. You may have already done it. We all do it. And I want you to notice when you do it and maybe why you do it. What makes you disengage at that moment? Okay, so I'm going to go back to the top. Here we go. The title of this talk is Speaking and Selling with Confidence. And the reason that it's called that is because a lot of the time when founders and leaders and speakers come and work with me, it's the word that I hear more than anything else is confidence. I want to feel confident. I want to convey a sense of confidence. I want to inspire confidence. So we all really like the idea of sounding confident, of feeling confident. I'm actually curious how many people here at one point or another in your life you have felt that you wished you had more confidence. We can show of hands or an emoji. I'm going to pause there. So I'm curious to hear, maybe in the chat. Now, not what I did differently between version 1 and version 2, because I did a lot of things differently. And by the way, I wasn't trying to act like I'm really not confident. I'm afraid. I wasn't trying to play up a lack of confidence. But I'm just curious in yourself, did anything feel different to you in yourself? For example, maybe you'll say, in version 1, I was interested, I was curious, or I was skeptical, or I was thinking the sky's full of it. I don't know, it could be anything. In version 2, I felt, I don't know, maybe you felt something, maybe you didn't. Thank you. Felt more engaged in version 1. I felt intrigued. Interesting. Easier to maintain my attention in version 1. Nash, could you say something more about that, if it's all right, if you're in a place where you can turn on your microphone?
Sure, it's on.
Oh, good. Thank you. What do you mean easier to maintain my attention?
Like, I just felt like I had to pay a lot more attention to what you were saying in order to capture what you were saying.
Interesting. Why? Do you have any idea of why that is? It was harder to capture what I was saying, even though I was saying the same thing.
The only signals I was getting were verbal. Whereas before, there was like a whole host of other signals, your face, your body language, other things that you were doing that I was unconsciously picking up on. And then I was getting the message from multiple angles. Whereas the second time I was like, what's he saying?
Ooh, I love that, getting the message from multiple angles. Yeah, so you're way ahead of where I'm going in a wonderful way. That's exactly where I'm going, is talking about these streams of information that you're sending. This is the theory. So, if there's anything else anyone wants to share, feel free in the chat. But I think what I get a lot when people respond to this is, you might have felt something during version 1. You might have felt interested, intrigued, checked out. I don't know what it is. You might have felt skeptical, which is totally fine. But you had to take a point of view. You had to feel something, because something is happening. It feels like something is happening. There's possibility. There's something happening in front of you. It's live, and you have to take a viewpoint on it. You have to figure it out and take a viewpoint on it and figure out how you feel. Whereas in version 2, it may not really feel like there's anything happening or any possibility, and it doesn't require anything of you to actually lean in and figure it out and engage with it. So my goal is to help you find a bit more of this version 1, so that people have to lean forward and engage. Because if they don't, it doesn't matter how great your sales narrative is, how great your pitch deck is, and how much traction you have still matters, but they would have already seen that. You sent that over. There's a lot of things that do matter, but it doesn't matter what you're saying in the meeting, because they're not listening to it. They've checked out already. They've figured it out. So we're going to talk about, surprise to surprise. A lot of this is about the voice. So we're going to talk about the voice. But before I get into the how do you use your voice to make people more engaged, I want to talk about the why, what we just talked about a little bit with Nash. Because this is actually kind of non-obvious. It doesn't totally make sense. I suspect most of you here have a friend who is brilliant and has a lot of valuable things to say, but you wouldn't necessarily put them up on the stage as a keynote speaker. Maybe they have a lot to say, but the way they speak is a little bit more monotone, or they don't look at you, or whatever it is. But like, why does that matter? I mean, it's a pretty bad heuristic, is to say if someone speaks monotone, I'm not going to listen to them. Like, there's a very good chance that they speak monotone, and also what they say is incredibly valuable. So like, why would it doesn't matter what you say, it matters how you say it. Why would that be true? So I'm going to share with you a theory that comes from, this isn't my theory, it comes from what's called the Miller voice method, which is a very powerful method of voice training that's spreading in acting schools. I studied it. I did not invent it in any way, but the theory goes like this. What I'm doing right now as I'm speaking to you is I'm sending information your way. And there's 3 categories of this information. There are the words, the semantic information. That's a bit of it. There's the visuals. I'm on your screen. I'm in this little box. I'm in a box on a box, and you see my face move, and you see my hands move, and you're paying attention to that. Or you're not, because you have another window over it, and you're looking out the window, whatever it is. But there's some visual information, and that information matters a lot in person. It actually, in presentations, especially if you have a pitch deck and you're small in the corner, it's only so much information. And then number 3 is the sound. So my voice, the timbre of my voice, the frequency, how the frequency changes, the harmonic overtones, all of these words describing its spectrographic signature. And there's a lot of information there. There's a lot of information. And what you're doing with it is your brain is a prediction machine. So you're trying your best unconsciously to get ahead of it and figure it out and package it up and move on. Because evolutionarily, well, you see something move and you go, is it a leaf or a tiger? Fight or flight, or move on and think about something else. Oh, I have to figure this out. I have to get ahead of it. Okay, it's a leaf. Okay, don't worry about it. Do something else. Right? And that could be an investor meeting. Do I pass or do I invest or consider it? In a sales meeting, do I try this tool out maybe, or do I ghost this person? So people are constantly unconsciously making this decision of, is this worth more of my attention to figure it out? Or did I get it? Can I package it up? Did I figure it out? Done. Great. Move on to the next thing. And the lesson I don't want you to draw from this is like, you got to be unpredictable. You got to do crazy things and use memes in your deck to throw them off and pattern interrupt. I mean, there's some truth to that, but that's all at the layer of the content. That's all that one kind of top layer. Where you have a great deal of control and a lot of options and tools is in the rest of it, in your voice and in what we call vocal variation. So I want to go back to that experiment I did earlier of the slightly more monotone version. So if I'm talking like this is, Nash, I'm going to go back to exactly what you said. If I'm talking like this, and there's not a lot of change in the pitch, and there's not a lot of change in the rhythm, and there's not a lot of change in the harmonic overtones, and there's not a lot of change in anything except the words are changing moment to moment. But actually, you can think at estimates are between 800 and 2,000 words per minute, and you can read at several hundred words per minute, and I'm only speaking at 150 words per minute. So you're just thinking like, this could have been an email. I'm just not adding information to it. What your voice is able to do is to pack more information into every word, every piece of the semantic layer, so that there's more to decode, so that you're overwhelming them with information that is changing moment to moment. It is pretty unpredictable, so that they have to lean in and pay attention and go, okay, what's going on here? Let me figure this out. Let me figure this out. And that's all happening unconsciously. And then what they think is, oh, that was more engaging. Oh, that was interesting. Oh, that person, at the end of the day, I'm really remembering that one person. I wonder why. Okay, so that's the theory. That's the why. And let's get into the how. How can you actually use your voice to add more information and make people lean in? This is where I will share a deck. This is what I call your vocal variation toolkit. So I'm going to go over 4 small tools you have. Well, they're huge tools, but they're like easier to figure out. And then one enormous one. The first four are, number one, pitch variation. Number two, rhythmic variation. Number three, consonant contrast, the contrast between the consonants. This one is a little bit less obvious. I'm going to go over in a moment. And then the fourth is more of a psychological one. It's an acting tool, intention or action. So pitch variation. I'm sure you know what I mean by this. You have a certain range of your voice that you speak in. And if my range goes up to here, and then it goes back down to here, and this is the range I speak in, I have some variance available, but not really that much. And then suddenly, if I lift something up, if I lift one piece that I'm saying, ooh, like something just happened. You lean in a little bit, right? It's the difference between saying, I'm going to lift something versus I'm going to lift something up. So you, all of you, and me too, have more range than you are using. So the secret to finding more pitch variation is, first of all, just getting comfortable in the top of your voice and in the bottom of your voice. And I do that. The exercise I recommend for that is what's called lip trills. And you can actually, if you want to turn off your microphone, you can try this really quickly. You may have done this before. It sounds like this. Oh, it might cut off. I have to turn off my noise cancellation, or else it thinks it's noise. Okay, here we go. Sounds like this. And you can all try that with me at home. Take a breath in, and just from the top. It's nice to see all of your lips moving. And then from the bottom up, you can do that with me. And now I'm going to go down to up to down. Go. And down to top to bottom to top. So this doesn't have to be a big range. It doesn't, if you feel like, oh, I only have this much, that doesn't matter. The key is unlocking and starting to feel, oh, it's really interesting. What just happened? I started speaking more in a different part of my range because I just unlocked it. So all it's doing is stretching a little bit. So you have the top of your range available and you have the bottom of your range available. If you just do that, you'll automatically, as I'm doing now, start to speak in more of your range. The variance will happen. It will get exciting. You don't have to do much. Number two, rhythmic variation. So rhythmic variation means a few things. One is speed. So are you talking quickly or are you talking slowly? There's also the space between the words. And then there's the duration of the words. So for example, you can highlight a word by pausing, or you could highlight a word by elongating it, right? These are all variations in the rhythm, and it's really fun to play with. And in a little bit, I'm going to go through some exercises you can all do at home. The thing I would lean into just to try is, if you are somebody who naturally speaks pretty slowly, just occasionally speak a little faster to land something. If you're somebody who naturally speaks very, very quickly like I do, then occasionally you need to remind yourself that if I slow down for this part, people will pay attention. Right. And then there's deliberate pauses, which I'm sure you've heard about deliberate pauses, and you can pause to really make a point. But if you do that a lot, then there's no variation. So these are all things you can play with. Third, again, this is one that you may not have heard about. The idea is, look at that deliberate pause just by taking a drink of water. Very powerful. Sorry. Side note, I have a friend who's an amazing salesperson who very deliberately, he will say the price, and then he'll take a drink of water, only to force himself to pause so that he doesn't say the price and then go, okay, but I could discount that. It just forces him to pause. Good trick. Okay, consonants. I'm going to say 3 consonants. T, G, V. Those are really, really different. It's almost like I'm playing 3 different instruments. T, G, V. And they naturally have contrast. right? I don't have to decide I'm going to make these different words or different sounds have contrast. All you have to do is, instead of what most people do, which is kind of letting everything mix together and not allowing a lot of contrast between their consonants, which means it's hard to understand you, but also more importantly for our purposes, there's just less contrast. All you have to do is just work on emphasizing your consonants a little bit, and all of a sudden, just from that, things start to come alive. It's like fireworks. They pop, 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 pop. And all you're doing is just taking advantage of the natural variation in frequency and sound and all these things that happen naturally when you just use the sounds that are available to you. And I'll go through an exercise in a moment about that. Okay, fourth one. Is anybody here, do you have any, if you're taking an acting class and intention or playing an action, does that mean anything to you? For anyone here? Let me find my chat. Okay. Maybe yes, maybe no. So this idea of intention or action is more of a psychological one, and that it emerges in your voice. You don't have to think about what am I doing with my voice. But for example, let's say I am warning you with my voice. Or I'm uplifting you with my voice. I'm uplifting you with my voice, with my body, with everything. I'm uplifting you. Or I'm teasing you a little bit. All I'm doing is deciding an action I'm going to play to you. I'm picking a word, an active word, and I just do it. I do it to my audience or to my imagined person I'm talking to, right? If I'm not getting much back from my audience, this is another topic you can imagine who you're talking to, and I'm kind of teasing you a little bit with my words. And that turns into vocal variation, consonant variation, all these other pieces of variation, but it's more psychological. It's very fun to play with. So that's another tool in your tool belt. Now, exercises you can do. I talked about that a little bit. We'll come back to it. The fifth one is the biggest change you can make. It's deceptively simple, but hard to develop and do habitually. And I'll give an example of it. Okay, I'm going to speak this way first, and I have a fair amount of variation in my voice. I'm changing my rhythm. I'm changing my pitch. And hi, my name is Arlo. I'm a former actor and startup founder. Now I work with a lot of people. Okay. Now I'm going to say it again. Hi, my name is Arlo. I'm a former actor and startup founder, and now I coach founders, leaders. Okay. Not what did I change? We'll get to that in a moment, but did it feel different? And what felt different? Again, A, this is the way I'm speaking. I'm speaking like this. This is the way my voice sounds. B, this is the way I'm speaking. Hi. Does it feel different to you at all? Different energy? Inviting, I like that. Inviting. Yeah, sometimes people use the word generous, I like. One person told me, a founder I was working with said, version A, it feels like it's pre-recorded. Like somebody has recorded this and now it's being played back. Version B is happening right now in this very moment. So the thing I am changing, and the one and only thing I'm paying attention to, is breath flow. And this is a huge topic. You could study it for 3 years. I did. But I also know we're running out of time, so I'm going to give like a 20-second version of this. Most people, they breathe in, they hold, and then they speak. They speak on a slightly held breath. So my breath is held. I have some tension. My resonators are not able to resonate as much. My voice doesn't have the same overtones. It becomes more flat. It has less information in it. Versus, if I breathe in, and I speak on my breath, and I allow my breath out as I'm speaking, the only thing that changes is my resonators are released and have the ability to add more layers of sound. It's not that it's louder, it's that it has more information. So how can you use this? Again, because it's a big topic. The way you can use this is just to practice breathing in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and speaking on your breath, versus breathing in, holding, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I was going to work with someone one-on-one, but I don't think we have time for that. So everyone you can do this on your own with your microphones off. Breathe in, hold, and then keep your breath held as you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it might definitely feels tense. It also might feel familiar. Now breathe in, and you're going to let out your breath, not all at once, but let it out as you speak. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. So breathe in and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 without any hold. Do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can learn to use more breath as you speak, and all of a sudden, everything just comes alive. Takes a little practice, but it is the number one way that you can make people feel like, oh, I gotta pay attention. Okay, you're busy founders, so let me give you the 90-second exercise you can do. And I recommend you actually do this, whether you do 90 seconds every day or you put a 5-minute calendar invite to yourself 3 times a week. Here's something you can do so that over time, all these changes will naturally start to happen in your voice. And by the way, you could go deep in this, you could study it for years, but if you actually just put a little bit of attention to it and just think about it and focus on it and practice it a little bit, you'll be surprised what a big impact it can have. In part because nobody does this work. Nobody's thinking about it other than, actors. So I call this a filters exercise. You take a piece of text. This could be the response to a common objection you get. It could be your elevator pitch. It could be your company one-liner. It could be a favorite poem or quote you have. And filter number 1, you say it and you vary your pitch. You go from down to up as you're talking and then up and down. And then you vary your pitch all over and play with how you can highlight different pieces of it with different pitch. That's it. Number 2, rhythm. You play with speaking slowly and speaking quickly. You play with pausing. You play with holding out words. It's a game. You're playing. It's like, warming up, throwing a ball against the wall. Number 3, focus on the consonants. If you focus just on the consonants, this is not the way you want to speak in life, but this allows your mouth to start to develop a feeling of how different consonants live in different places in your mouth. And then you let go of that when you actually speak to people, but that continues to happen. Okay, number 3, intention. You can do this if you have a long block of speech. Pick a paragraph and say, on this paragraph, I'm going to inspire. In this paragraph, I'm going to warn. And you just pick, if it's possible, I can send resources after. There's a whole list of action words. Pick one randomly and just say, I'm going to do that. Okay, finally, you breathe in and you simply speak on your breath with all these other things happening. And that's it. It'll literally take you 90 seconds. I got to do some consonant work. And it will start to emerge in your voice without consciously thinking about it. Okay, finally, I want to land where I started, which is this idea of confidence. Because sure, like you want to do all these things, you also do want to feel confident. So I bet you've all heard of that psych study where smiling, if you're happy, you smile, but also smiling makes you happy. Same thing with confidence. Most people want to wait until they feel confident, and then they think they'll sound confident. The reverse is also true. So I can decide that I am going to speak with a real awareness of how I use my voice, with very intentional actions I'm playing, and I'm going to sound confident, whether I feel it or not. And after a couple minutes, I start to feel confident, magically. So it's what we call outside-in work. Instead of working on yourself and hoping eventually you'll display confidence, just do it. Okay, that's it. I know this went over time. I know we have time for some questions still. Hope this was helpful, and looking forward to answering any questions you have.
Amazing. And I knew it was going to be packed full of insights. It already has been. We've received incredible questions as folks were registering, so we have those. But folks live here, one of the exciting parts of being here live is getting to ask your questions in person and unmuting and jumping in. So please feel free to chime in. And we did already get a question, Arlo, in the chat as you were going over those exercises. One was about accents and navigating accents. And actually, one of our pre-submitted questions was also on this. What's your advice with how to meld what you're saying with, accents or for anybody who where English is a second language?
Yeah, really good question. So I had this conversation recently with a speech teacher of mine who does accent reduction work, which I don't. What she said is when people come to her and they think they need quote unquote accent reduction, usually they don't. Usually it's how they feel. It's about, oh, I feel like people don't understand me, right? And that becomes a cyclical, positive feedback loop where you feel a little bit uncomfortable. And so you are uncomfortable and people don't understand you as well because of that. So all I can say is everything that I talked about, the breath work, the consonant work, is incredibly relevant if you feel that your accent is in any way holding you back. And usually, as my speech teacher said when I talked to her, she said, usually you do that, and then it turns out that's the work you had to do.
I have another question here. Lisa, do you want to ask, do you want to unmute and turn your camera on and ask, or should I just read out what you wrote in the chat? I'll give you a chance.
All good.
Okay, no problem. She said similar question on accents, but U.S. regional, Californian, how to be more neutral.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, you probably all know that people in sales, I was in the sales world for a while, and when they speak to someone in the South, they talk a little bit differently and they slow down because you want to mirror the person you're talking to so they connect with you. Then you call someone on the East Coast and it's really different. So there certainly is a relationship in that mirroring is powerful. I'm not actually very good at accents. And I would say, there are ways, there are like standard textbooks on how to get rid of your regional dialect. And I just don't think it's worth the work that it takes. I think what you can do is think about the person that you're talking to and just lean in a little bit to how they speak, to mirror them a little bit. But I actually find it's usually counterproductive to think like, I want to change the way that I speak. Because again, usually that's not the most important thing.
That's great. And then Nash says, Nash, do you want to say, I see your camera on. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question live?
Sure, I don't mind doing that. Yeah, you said right at the beginning, like it really doesn't matter how you feel. It matters how you make others feel. And I was like, that rings true. That makes a lot of sense. I'm just wondering, what do you see if there is a correlation between how you feel and how you make others feel? What is that correlation?
Yeah, it's a good question because it's a bit of a rhetorical device, my saying that, right? Of course it matters how you feel. It's just, if you concentrate on how you feel, it's usually not helpful. If you take your mind off of, there's this whole theory in acting, the idea of the target, is that you are putting your attention on something or somebody else. And everything that happens inside of you will follow from that. So if I'm paying attention to you, I'm not thinking like, do I feel confident? But I will, all those feelings of, oh, am I doing this right? How's this going? Are going to go away a little bit. So yeah, you want to be somebody who your feelings are, your passion is infectious. And by the way, all this work and speech clarity and breath work makes that happen and makes how you feel transmit to other people. I just find that thinking about, oh, let me change the way I feel, that's a very long process. You can be in therapy for a long time for that. And you can actually shortcut it and just kind of think about how you're communicating, and it changes the way you feel. So it's more like it's a dialectic, right? They both influence each other. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's how I feel about it.
Do you? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and jump in.
Gauging what is too much, because this is all new ways of speaking. So in self-practice, like where does it go too far and it looks unnatural on the other side?
I would say almost everybody I work with, they're, as an acting teacher told me once, when someone said, "Well, I don't want to be, I don't want to be over the top," and said, "You can't even see the top." Like most people, they're like, "Oh my God, I'm using so much of my range right now. It feels really unnatural." And it's like, no, you're not. You are not. I mean, I'm overdoing it a little bit, right? Right now, I'm overdoing it a little bit. This actually, I don't know, how does this make you feel? Does it make you feel like I'm crazy, or does it make it feel like I really care about what I'm saying? So chances are you're not overdoing it. And that feeling is a useful barometer for saying, good, I'm stretching myself.
And it's funny, especially with pitches, and customer conversations. They oftentimes haven't met you before, so they won't know if you're like way out of what your usual. But I think we're always so much more in our own heads. So that's a great question, Duncan.
It's such a good point, because people often, they find it harder to do this with people they know, because they're like, oh, they're going to think like, why is Arlo suddenly talking this weird way today? And it's easy to experiment in customer conversations if you've never met that customer before.
Yeah, exactly. One, our founders often are doing pitches, Arlo, and so one of the questions we received was about becoming memorable, or like presenting for, making sure the investor, whoever it is that you're pitching, remembers you. Any tips that you can provide there?
I mean, it's everything I said today. It's all this is about how you make people feel in the first impression you make. The second time you meet somebody, the third time you meet somebody, all these things are going to have slightly less impact, because they're not trying to figure you out, right? So I will admit, I am somebody who, when it comes to pitching to investors, I'm much better at that first meeting and getting people's attention, getting people to lean in and go, "Ooh, I want to learn more," than I am at so far at building a very successful business. So if you are somebody who has a great business that people should want to invest in, but you don't have the piece of meeting people for the first time and getting them really excited about it, that's the piece you want to work on, right? So it's all of this. If you do this, you will be memorable, because 99% of the meetings people have is just relatively dry.
Yeah, I love that. Carlos, did you have a question? I saw your hand. No, okay. I just want to make sure we didn't miss a live question. Arlo, one of the we received a few questions on this topic ahead of time, but it was around reading the audience. And if you're up there presenting or in a sales pitch and you see, my audience seems distracted, or I'm losing them, how do you recover from that? Can you give us a few tips on understanding and reading the room and then adapting in the moment?
Yeah. So there's two sides to that. One is advice, again, from one of the best sellers I've ever met, who made me do this, was always pop up everyone's faces. If you're in a presentation, have their faces open, because people, before they say something, they're going to want to say something. And you want to pay attention to if somebody's making a face, and actually call it out and go, it looks like, Duncan, it seems like maybe you have something you want to say. And you don't want to say it aggressively. It seems like you have something you want to say, huh? No, you want to, I could be wrong, but did you have something you want to say? You're being gracious. You're offering the floor. And that way it makes into a conversation, right? The worst feeling is like, I'm talking, and everyone's cameras are off, or their cameras are on, but they're tuned out. It's a really, really bad feeling. So if you can say, I think I did it earlier. I was like, gosh, I'm just talking. And why don't I have Nash actually talk about his question, right? It really helps you, gives you a chance to breathe. And it varies. It varies the situation, right?
Yeah. Have you seen, or have you been in situations where you've had to reset? You're like, let me start over, right? Like it's not going well, maybe, and you feel like the point has not landed. Have you successfully, been in situations? Would you recommend that as to our founders, if they're in a pitch that isn't quite landing?
Yeah.
How do you reset?
So midstream, what you can do, if you're like, oh, it's all getting away from me, I feel uncomfortable, this is going, it's not landing. The one thing you can really do is just pause, take a breath, and continue speaking in a slightly more measured way. that does two things. Number one, it sends a signal to your audience. Oh, something changed. Oh, I have to pay attention. I was in another window. Wait, there was a pause. Wait, did my connection cut off? Oh, no. Okay. It just varies it. Number two, it sends a signal to yourself. When you start speaking a little bit more slowly, you just feel a little bit more at ease, right? This is the outside in stuff. It's really magical because you want to do the opposite. You want to run and try to catch up and go, oh, they're getting away from me. They're not paying attention. I got to push more energy at this. And then suddenly it just feels worse and worse and worse. So it's stop. And by the way, this is also as an actor, when you lose your line, when you can't remember what to say next, you breathe and it starts to come back to you. So that's it. That's the trick.
Folks, last call if anyone has a live question. I'm going to ask two other questions if other people don't have any questions. Arlo, one is avoiding jitters when you're speaking in public, or like dealing with the nerves. And I know you recently wrote a LinkedIn post about this, but just any advice on managing that nervous feeling that can, feel so crippling.
Yeah, it can be crippling. And by the way, I'm speaking on all this from an acting perspective, and people think, I'm an actor. I've performed in front of thousands of people, and you think, oh, actors are so confident. They have to do this. And actors are some of the least confident people I know. They're all neurotic and like, oh, I'm going to fail, right? But they do it anyways. So I think part of it is releasing the idea that you're going to feel like, I'm not nervous, everything's fine. You're going to be nervous. I used to go into audition rooms and my legs would shake and I'd be terrified. And then I booked a job and booked another job. And I was like, oh. So I think the advice I gave that I passed along from somebody else was do it nervous. If you're going to speak, but you're nervous, do it nervous. That's okay. An exercise my voice teacher actually had us do that was very powerful was if you're sitting and something's coming up and you feel nervous about it and you feel that nervousness in your body, pay attention to where you feel it. Like maybe I feel it like in my solar plexus. Breathe in and actually try to get that feeling of nervousness to expand. Feel it more. Feel what that thing is and let it expand. Pay attention to it. Because it's just a feeling in your body. And if you try to push it away, you're going to feel it more and more. And you've probably heard this, the signal of being nervous. It's the same physiological presentation of being excited, right? So are you nervous? Are you excited? Or are they one and the same? Well, actually allow yourself to feel that way. It's not a bad thing. It's very useful.
I love that. Lean into the feeling. Okay, we have another question in the chat, and then we'll end on the final question, the question that we end all of our Winning Wednesdays on. But the question in the chat is advice on managing tone when you know you're pressed on time. So you have a 90-second pitch, and you want to fit in everything that you can about your company. What is your advice on managing that?
Yeah, my cheat, my shortcut is always breath. It's just, I'm going to talk on my breath. And even though I'm talking really quickly, it's just breathing in and speaking on your breath. And again, this is something you do have to practice, but it means you feel better. There's more variation and you can speak really quickly and there's still a lot of interest in it. So, you're like, I can't speak slowly because I'm pressed for time, but you can still breathe. There's always time to breathe. And can I say one last thing? That's a
Absolutely.
question I get. I just always get the question about authenticity, about like feeling like you're performing. Like you're like, oh, the way Arlo speaks, well, he's an actor. He's a performer. He does this with his hands. Like if I do that, it's going to feel inauthentic. What this is all about is taking what's authentic to you and allowing it to radiate out to others. So all this work, it's not about trying to become something else or present something else. It's if you do these things, then the way you actually are authentically will land on other people. So don't be afraid that, oh, I can't do this. This isn't me. It's actually like, this is you, but make sure you can communicate you to other people.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for ending on that note. I love that. Our final question that we ask all of our Winning Wednesday guests is what your secret is to maintaining a winning mindset and driving momentum in the face of challenges. So, our founders are up against enormous odds and it's incredibly hard. Everyone will face innumerable challenges along their founder journey. What's your secret to maintaining a winning mindset amidst all that?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, it's also very easy. It's just loving what I'm doing. Just loving what I'm doing, the people I'm working with. And if you know you don't love what you're doing, there's no way, if as a founder who, your company takes over your entire life and it's everything, if you're passionate about it, you can keep on going. And if you're not, figure out why. And is there an area within it that maybe you are more passionate about? Because I don't think you can have a winning mindset or a win in startup world unless you are passionate. So that's it.
I love that. Love what you do. Thank you so much, Arlo. What an incredible, everyone, round of applause for Arlo. That was just phenomenal. So many actionable takeaways. I want to myself practice 90 seconds every day. I think that's a really great, actionable exercise that I want to incorporate in my life. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for coming. I want to invite you to our next Winning Wednesday, which is scheduled for July 10th. Samantha McKenna is a phenomenal thought leader in the sales space. Yeah, Arlo is acknowledging that. She's phenomenal. She's going to join us to help us perfect our cold outreach, and that's her expertise. And she's actually someone I've admired for a long time. So I'm thrilled to bring you all this session and invite you to join us. And with that, I want to just thank you again for being here today. Arlo, this was phenomenal. So grateful for your time. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you all so much. Take care.